Ok, bom evento.
Ótimo.
Obrigada.
Lu?
Você quer fazer as honras, Luciana?
Não, pode fazer, fica à vontade. É teu.
Obrigada. Professora Luciana Morilas está coordenando.
So Professor Luciana Morilas is coordinating this project here in Brazil. This partnership with the University of São Paulo and University of Surrey that is funded by means of this project, whose name is Women in Mobility in Times of Crisis. A quite interesting project that, you know, addresses the research work around this discussion on the possibility or impossibility of women to move, to displace themselves in complicated times, in crisis times, as for example, the time that we are living, we're still facing the pandemic of the COVID-19. So there are some quite interesting papers and works and projects, quite nice projects that have been emerging under the scope of this project. And we host one of them. We have the honor to host one of them with the participation of Catiúscia, Custódio de Souza. She's an indigenous expert working for OPAN, the Operation for Native Amazon. So Catiúscia, she's a PhD student for political sciences in the Federal University of Santa Catarina. We are going to welcome Tereza Kezonazokero. She's a professor and indigenous leader of the Parazi people, and Alessandra Guató, that is the president of Taquina, the organization of the indigenous women from the state of Mato Grosso, Brazil. So brave women, courageous women who are associated to these organizations that develop this beautiful work on which they're going to talk about. And I hope you all enjoy. I hope you enjoy the event, and welcome. Catiúscia, would you like to begin as the first panelist? Feel free. Yes, it could be me, or if the other ladies would like to begin with the session, but it can be me. So let me share my screen. And I'm going to provide some information that I would like to introduce to you. And then after your presentation, we are going to have the Q&A session, the debate session. Can you see my screen? Yes. So I would like to thank you all for attending. And I would like to say that this is a very important opportunity to us to socialize the work that we have been developing. So today's topic is Indigenous women, the training, the management, and the income generation. Just a minute, I would like to click through. There you go. So OPAN, the Native Amazon operation, is indigenous NGO, an indigenous NGO, one of the first in Brazil. We have been working for 53 years vis-a-vis the indigenous peoples, and OPAN is made up of multidisciplinary teams and coordination teams. They master different areas of knowledge, and OPAN's mission is to strengthen the indigenous protagonism, always respecting the social political organization of the indigenous peoples. So OPAN works by means of participative methodologies, working to manage the territories and the natural resources, fostering and subsidizing the autonomy and the sustainability of the indigenous territories. So OPAN has a long history. If we look into its history, it really addresses methodology for the indigenous school education, indigenous health. We did that in times in which the Brazilian state, the Brazilian government didn't have government institutions that would address this kind of work with effectiveness. So OPAN has this quite long history acting to promote the indigenous education and indigenous health, and also the strengthening of the indigenous organizations. Since early on, since its inception, when the indigenous organizations were not so visible, OPAN supported them, and OPAN participated in many assembly meetings of the indigenous people in 1970s, in the 1980s. And throughout this process, OPAN contributed for defining, delimiting the indigenous territories in many of the country's region. Overall speaking, OPAN managed to delimit more than 3 million hectares of indigenous land. And as time goes by, as the government became more organized by means of its institutions and agencies, OPAN then began working based on a new format that is working together with the indigenous peoples to enhance the territory and environmental management practices in their land, and strengthening, above all, and subsidizing the value chains uh, regarding its biodiversity, acting on the cashew network, pirarucu fish, and picky and craftsmanship, the production of crafted products as well, thereby contributing for the entire process. OPAM, the Operation Native Amazon, contributed for the environmental and territorial management policies in indigenous land. We call it Pena Act, that's the policy. And in this process, by conducting this process, we were able to contribute so that more than 11 environmental and territorial plans were developed. These plans, they are books that tell the story, they talk about the customs, the habits of the peoples, and how they organize socially and politically, how they consider their future projects as well. This is highly important documents for the management of the territory, including in this case, if there are undertakings that are meant to be built in indigenous land. So for those of you who are interested, we have OPAN website, and there you can find the management plans. They're available in PDF format. And OPAN also has this program, that is the program for indigenous rights, that has been working together with the peoples to face the threats. And we want to ensure the constitutional rights. There should be no setback in that area. For some of you, you might have seen in the news, you are aware of the Brazilian context in terms of the indigenous rights. So the RIGHT program has been working strongly vis-a-vis the indigenous peoples, monitoring the infrastructure works, for example, the registration of the sacred heritage sites, and also capacity building activities. We subsidize, for example, the participation of youth, of leaderships, and of women in the national and international fora. And it has to do with the indigenous rights, and especially environmental rights. These are the two agendas. They are not separate. These are the two agendas that are interconnected, and they have to do with the indigenous peoples. Under the scope of the strengthening of the indigenous organizations, this is one of the OPAN actions. It has become, increasingly stronger. Today, we work with the 16 indigenous associations in the states of Mato Grosso and Amazonas. Some of the organizations, they're regional organizations. Some other associations are root organizations. They're located in the tribes. And we support the development and the holding of assembly meetings. We do workshops so that we can develop, execute, and approve the projects. So we take care of the entire journey, the approval of the bidding process, the approval of the project, the implementation, and how it is going to be implemented in the indigenous lands. Well, we also regulate the associations, strengthening the administrative and financial management practices. We always respect their political and social organization. So we have been supporting many fronts of work. For example, Xingu and Aguaya articulation, whose name is AXA. We have been working with the Environment and Development Mato Grosso format, the Juruena Vivo network, that is a collective of organizations, settlers, then this also engages the academia. So we aim at preserving the Juruena basin, water basin, because it affects so many traditional communities. We also have a collective effort for the management of the Pirarucu. This has really stood out in the media, dealing in this case with the restaurants, because the Pirarucu will generate income and sustainability if we manage properly the territory, and it has to do with the Amazon culinary, and also the ecology network and the Médio Juruá territory in the Amazon, in the state of Amazonas. So here you can see some images of some of the events and workshops that were held. We can see the leaders, we can see the OPAM team participating as well. Very well. OPAM, regarding its specific work with women, because, you know, in the last decades, women's visibility, not only indigenous women, but women have come to the fore. And we have been conducting this work historically with the communities and with women, not only through the organizations that are regulated, that are truly a corporation, but also in the communities, in the farming lands, in the production of craft, taking into account that women play a fundamental role to uphold their territories and the equality of rights as well. Women, very often, they play this essential role so that the territories can be sustainable. More specifically, indigenous women, they have been developing or playing many roles. Militancy, the engagement with the stakeholders, they're mothers, they are craftswomen, they are teachers, they are promoters of the culture, they are the guardians of the territory, they're farmers, they're leaders, they're health professionals. Well, we work with this entire universe of possibilities within the indigenous territories. And in spite of the current political global context, but also the local political context here in Brazil, and I think the world has been witnessing the reduction of the social well-being here, the closing with the dialogue with the civil society, and the world has been witnessing the progressive increase of the ethnic racial violence. Even so, in the last few decades, the indigenous women in Latin America and in Brazil have been emerging with a strength, showing their protagonism and really providing visibility, especially to the social and environmental issues, because these are, of course, fundamental for the survival of these peoples and of these women. Now, about the gender-related work, we at OPAN, we are quite careful in dealing with this when we go into the territories to work with women. In spite of the academic production regarding gender, there are some cultural issues there. There are different ways of living, and very often the academic concepts will not fit into the reality of these women. And that will depend on the level of contact, their school level, for example. Let's say we have this scenario in which indigenous women, they are part of the academia, so they, of course, they use different concepts, and then they look back to their culture and they see that new concepts won't fit in their culture. So the indigenous intellectual women, they have been producing the criticism to the academic theories, as Sandy Grandy would say, that is the white stream feminism. So it's an additional force, it's an additional scenario that they present to us. So we are quite careful, we listen, we do a precise diagnose of their reality in their territories, in their communities, so that we can work in a healthy and supplementary fashion, addressing the gender issue or women's issues, because the women's indigenous movement for a long time has been posing to us that they don't want to have a divide. They are aware of, you know, physical, psychological, domestic violence. They are aware of the sexism, but they want to overcome the barriers and work in a supplementary fashion. So we play this fundamental role to be attentive and to do a precise diagnosis. And all of that has been really been mobilizing our institutional role at OPAN. So we have a parity of composition between men and women in the coordination of teams. We work with working groups to discuss the theory, but also the practice. We discuss empirically the issues around women. So this institutional reflection always provides, subsidies, the basis for the work with the indigenous communities. So by means of our reflections, by means of the working groups, we are able to redesign the indigenous actions so that we can work with women. So the training processes vis-a-vis the organizations, the capacity building is key, especially when we discuss mobility and immobility of women in crisis situations or during the pandemic. So beyond the pandemic, the training processes, the development processes for the women who are organized, we really provide them mobility so that they feel more political persons, like political persons, so that they take part in the political decision institutional places, so that they can develop projects for their own communities. So this capacity building process will also be the underpinning part of the mobility of indigenous women in regards to the territories and also in regards to the public policies. So I show some pictures of the meetings that we had. We have this picture with Tereza and her daughter and Eliane. Eliane is a warrior. She is part of TACINA, the Federation of the Indigenous Peoples of the state of Mato Grosso. And down below, you see Alessandra there. And most women who participated in the last TACINA assembly meeting that was in December 2020. And this was an assembly meeting in which we chose the new board. So Alessandra was re-elected in this case. So we have this other picture of an association of women in Inhambequara. So they have been developing this project with L'Oreal. The name of the program is L'Oreal for the Future. So they learn how to sew so that they can have an income. Beautiful project because they already produce, dresses and clothing, and it's part of their culture already.
Well, I think that as for OPAN, this is what I had to present, which is already a lot. And so I open the floor now for Alessandra and Tereza Parisi. Actually, just a second. I think I skipped a slide that I would like to show you. This one. Here we also have
Visualizar aqui, modo tela cheia. Essa aqui
So these are other pictures, some of the workshops and that we have with the women. So here, media, telecommunication media that Tereza will mention, the TACINA, and the political education workshop. These are also online. We also have online meetings with the Union for the Future. So in the times of pandemics and with the difficulty on having brick and mortar activities, this is a way to develop our project.
Tentando passar aqui só minutinho. Gente, o computador tá me pregando uma peça.
Oh, I'm not being able to deal with my computer today. I'm sorry. I will try once again.
Vocês estão vendo?
Can you see the picture? Yes, but it's not changing the slides. I don't know why.
Dá para correr pelo canto da tela, será?
Maybe in the corner of the screen you can pass the slides.
Peraí. Tentando aqui.
Acho que você pode colocar na Taquiná, Kátia.
You can change for the Taquiná.
Você quer que eu tente compartilhar por aqui, Catiúscia?
Pode dar uma, pode tentar aí, eu não sei o que está acontecendo aqui com esse.
You can try it there. I don't know what is happening with my computer.
Talvez você parar o compartilhamento aí do seu.
Maybe you stop sharing.
Mas é porque eu fiz alterações ali no.
Ah, tem um arquivo novo, né?
Tem um arquivo novo. Vou tentar mais uma vez aqui. Bom, eu vou tentar colocar.
Well, I will try to put directly in their presentation because I'm having some problem. There was another slide that I would like to show that include the women associations with whom we work, but I just mentioned Takina is one of them, is the Association of Taina Sul, the women that inhabit Terecatinga in the municipality of Sapinzal, state of Mato Grosso, and Colimacê Association is a grassroots association in Comodoro, Mato Grosso, in the Plínio de Souza indigenous lands, the Riquibatsa Women, Indigenous Women Association in the territory Riquibasa at the north of Mato Grosso. And I will try to include Taquiná.
Não, fica tranquila, tá tudo bem, Catiúscia, a gente conseguiu compreender.
No, it's okay. We were able to understand, Catiúscia.
Tela cheia. Tá aparecendo?
Sim.
Ok.
Posso começar? Oi. Então,
Estamos ouvindo, mas não te vendo.
We do not see you. Well, I will start speaking. I'm speaking from my mobile. Good afternoon. I would like to thank for the invitation. And president of the Organization of Indigenous Women in the state of Mato Grosso. I'm a psychologist with a degree by the Federal University of Mato Grosso and also a degree in anthropology by the same, from the same university. And I will present our organization. Takina is an organization of the women in Mato Grosso constituted on 2009 in the territory Curabacairi in the Santana tribe and municipality of Nobres in Mato Grosso. And here we present some activities carried out during my term. There are more recent things, but this is from 2019. So we had a political strengthening of women. When we were starting our term, we carried out a project in partnership of SESE, taking Mato Grosso women to the World Women March of the Women, and which was very important to take these women from Mato Grosso to the march, the World March of Women. And then we had a meeting at São Domingos tribe village from the Carajá peoples to face suicide and value life, because we understand that we also have to consider mental health. Whenever we are called, we try to include this type of work. As Catiúscia said, always respecting cultural values, social orientation and structure, but there is a demand from very communities to address these issues. And so we include FUNAI, the National Indigenous Foundation of Brazil, the Secretary of State, SESI, and the State Secretariat in the state of Mato Grosso. And something else we've been working, another demand that from women in grassroots communities is addressing Maria da Pena Act, which is an act against domestic violence. And we've been working with that since 2017, and there was some resistance on addressing this issue. Some of the peoples didn't want to address it. And this was there was a strong need to address domestic violence. So we've been discussing that within the territories, the indigenous territories. We also had an act in Santana tribe together with FUNAI, the National Indigenous Foundation, and in the FUNAI auditorium with partnership of OPAN, Native Amazon Operation Program, and talking with the women police, was a women specialized in police specialized in women issues, and we are also working in sustainability projects. During pandemics, it became even stronger in our organization because everybody was concerned on having food enough and in a good quality to supply tribes and have food for all the families within the territories. But we also needed support from basic staple that in an emergency situation. And at the same time, we were looking for partners that could help us in the production of vegetable gardens and orchards. And we had support of UMIABI and OPAN as well to strengthen this sustainability actions within the territories. And after that, we also developed a project with Fundo Casa, with the Casa Foundation, to build arts and crafts workshop with the Guató people, that is my people, and also strategic planning with Takina to map the indigenous arts in the state of Mato Grosso, because we believe that it's very important to map this, and together with the mapping, consider the background they have in digital media, because during pandemics, many women could not leave their house, their tribes, to sell their products, to sell their art. So we developed digital media education programs so they can promote their work and they would be able to sell their products. This is very important. And the other issue is the political education. Currently, we see that this is necessary. It's necessary to understand about public policies and party policies and how all of that is structured. And we have now some indigenous ranks to run in the elections in our state. This is extremely important, and it's extremely important to have this education and background so they can also run as representatives of our people. And these are our partners. From the creation of our organization, FUNAI, the Indigenous National Foundation, is a partner. OPAN is first our partner of Taquiná in our formation and support in our activities. And the Fundo Casa Socioambiental, GIZ, that is a German cooperation agency. ICV is one of our first partners because when we thought on creating orientation, we were taking part in an event organized by ICV for the indigenous women in the state of Mato Grosso in 2006 in the Mudina people territory. And we realized that we needed to create a space for indigenous women to speak up. Many of them mentioned that most of the events, the invitations were for men, and they would like to take part in this discussion forum. So, as Catiúscia mentioned, we are feminists, but our work is not to be apart from men. We have to be in the same spaces of discussion so they understand that our work is as important as theirs. And we want to be in these spaces, considering discussions about health, politics, education. We want to be there, we want to be part, we want to understand. And really taking these spaces for us. Most of the women, when we started the organization, we thought in the women in the grassroots, but as they started to have education and background and advance their level of knowledge, and up to the moment they started to ingress universities, they go back to work with women that are in and out of the territories, especially the issue of violence, gender violence, and domestic violence. We have to work with those women that are in the indigenous territories and out of the indigenous territories. And we have support here in the state of some congressmen that supported us. We have the support of AMAGI and also the Federation of Indigenous Peoples in the state of Mato Grosso, UMIABI, that is the Union of the Indigenous Women in the Brazilian Amazon, and COIABI, that is the Coordination of Indigenous Organizations of Brazilian Amazon, and then superintendents for indigenous issues in the state of Mato Grosso. Well, I believe this is what I had to present. Thank you very much. And now I will pass the floor to Tereza for her presentation. Once again, I thank this invitation and this opportunity to be talking on behalf of indigenous women of the state of Mato Grosso and our organization. Many of them are now in Brasilia discussing the Bill of Law, always in the fight. Alessandra, I have here the map of Taquiná's activities, if you want to address it, because Mato Grosso is a very large state, a very big state. Well, I'm in the mobile, so I don't have a good visualization, if you can help me, I would, well, for those who can see the map, here at the right, we have the map of Brazil, and here in gray, the state of Mato Grosso is a huge state, geographically speaking, and very diverse, with different bioma, having the Cerrado, which is a savanna, the Amazon forest, the rainforest, and Pantanal, that is swamp flooded regions. And with 43 indigenous peoples, different peoples that are spread, especially in these areas in purple in the map. So our map of geographic activities is divided into 7 regionals, which are Cerrado Pantanal, which is south and southeast, Guaporé, which is northeast, and well, these are names that were established due to geographic division and people division, different nations, different indigenous nations, but Takina work with women. This is a huge area. So this is a challenge for Takina, this regional work, and be able to go to the grassroots of the territories. And Takina is doing that in a very fierce way, counting on women that are in the regional councils that are part of Takina and help bringing the demands from the grassroots to Takina. And I believe that we can now pass the floor to Tereza. And well, I also have a map from Tereza, for Tereza territory, and she can explain it better. Tereza, hello. Can you hear me? We can hear and see you. So good afternoon. I'm Tereza Cristina Kezonazokero from the Haliti Parisi people. I work in the city of Tangará da Serra in Mato Grosso. And as already mentioned, the importance of women participation, indigenous women participation in the generation and management of income, which is not different in the different indigenous territories. Our territory and the use of land is key for our survival. Everything that was presented by Takina and Opan is directly connected and intimately connected with the territory and the land. For the Haliti Parisi people, it's not different. The way of thinking and seeing our cosmovision, our organization, the organization of our people, our culture, our concern goes hand in hand with our spirituality and the spirituality of nature. It is very strong, the spirituality of our ancestors, and goes hand in hand, because the territory, the land, is very important for indigenous peoples because it's directly connected with the social, cultural, cosmologic, and cosmovision of the indigenous peoples. And for indigenous women, and here I'm speaking generally speaking because I'm also part of Takina, and I'm also part of the World March of Women that gather women from the whole country. For instance, now I will go to take part together with the women that are there. I'm a teacher. I have a degree in pedagogy. So
I'm also a researcher. And I work with the mother tongue. And the mother language, the mother tongue is fundamental regarding culture, the care that we have with the territory. It's very much important to link the mother tongue with women and the presence of women, because we call it a maternal language, right? Mother tongue, and it comes from mother, right? So indigenous women and the territory and the land, these are all deeply connected factors, entities, because the nature is a mother to us, the indigenous people. Survival is directly related to the territory, just like the strengthening of culture as well. Because if we have no territory, everything that you saw here, we're not going to have those. So when we show the map, and shortly when I finalize, I'm going to talk about the map and the Haliti territories. Well, that is the importance of preserving nature. As I said, the connection between nature, environment, and the indigenous peoples, it comes from our ancestrality. It's not happening just now. The vision and the relationship between nature and indigenous people is broad and deep. And why is it broad and deep? Because it's life, it's human life, it's us. So the preservation is highly important so that we can strengthen the culture, so that we can promote a social and political organization as well as sustainability. Today we talk about sustainability. And this is widely debated because the Haliti Parisi people, of course, we underwent, an assessment, and we aim at sustainability. But this is not an external concern. This is our internal concern as well, to address sustainability. There are many conversations, and I would like to highlight Haliti women. Since they're women and since they're mothers, as I said, there is this direct connection, this deep connection to the women's struggle. So that's the struggle that we have to participate in to promote sustainability. And we are also concerned with the rights. We are concerned about keeping up nature, preserving nature. We are concerned with the care for the future generations, because today we are here. Our children will grow, and then there'll be our grandchildren occupying the land. So we're very much concerned with sustainability. Well, today, to any indigenous people, I believe that we have to adjust. We have to be concerned with our quality of life, but we cannot shun away from our constitution, the Magna Letter, because this is the underpinning constitution for our rights. We have to pay attention to that. We have to, of course, make sure that 169 is enforced. And this is only important for women. Women are usually more delicate. Women are usually more concerned, more preoccupied. And it's very much important to mention this when we talk about sustainability, because sustainability has to promote what's good. It cannot, promote distraction. So it's a great deal of work for us, Haliti women. And indigenous women, they're always struggling. And in order to do that, we must interact. We women have to go the extra mile. We have to study, to research, to survey, so that we can stand in our right place, in our proper place, because it's our right. And speaking of the Haliti people, the relationship between the territory and the people is no different from other peoples, as I said, because nature is connected with the culture and strongly connected to the Haliti cosmology. Just like the other indigenous peoples, we have the delimitation of territories. We have 9 tracts of land, Haliti Paresi, and one of the most sacred territories, the key one, this has not been delimited. This is where our history lies. I live in this indigenous land that is Parisi. That's the one that I show here. So the indigenous land Parisi. So the Parisi really stands out. And then we have subgroups. Enumanere Kozari. Edueno Manero Kozari. And then we go up to Urapuru. And then from Formoso, we go to Parecis and Estivadinho and Juninha and Figueiras. So everything is interconnected with the two large tracts of land that you see here. So the population that lives here, they are from the Kozarum group. The population that lives here has to be concerned with the additional tracts of land that I show here. So it's a great deal of work. It's a lot of discussion. We have to keep track of what's happening, and the role of women today is to keep track of our women. Haliti, Paresi, women today, we do keep up to date. We still don't have an organization, but we are about to develop and create our association, whose name will be Criar, that is create in Portuguese, and I hope to create Criar this year so that we can facilitate our work. Because the two largest associations that we have in our territory that I showed to you, Utiariti, that is the Haliti Association, and Waimari, that is in the Utiariti territory. Well, in these organizations, men work. So the men are the directors and the managers. So we have virtually no connection whatsoever. Their approach is, oriented to a different kind of work. So we are going to establish the first women's association, the Haliti Parisi Women's Association. I spoke to Alessandra, and then I spoke to Eliane. So we'll make this association happen. We're going to create this association. So we have Utiariti, Parisi, Urapuru, Juininha, Figueiras, Estivadinho, Formoso, Ponte de Pedra. So this is our sacred land. And I've always spoken to Professor Francisca that we have to fight for this land, because this is where we have our original history. Haliti Parisi history began here. Uazari, he came from the Haliti people together with his brothers. He was the first to leave. And the mythic leader of the non-indigenous people also came from this region. And Wazar came from this people, and there was this delimitation of territory that was made for his people. So he came back to where his sister was, because she was near Ponte de Pedra. So today, they live there. That's their home. So it's a very sacred place. It's very strong. And here we have the Parecis, Estação Parecis. That's a historical tract of land. There we can find families. And it was a big struggle to be able to cover this land. It's not fully delimited yet, but we do find indigenous peoples who live there. So the Haliti people is concerned about these tracts of land that I talked to you about. And the two smaller tracts are related to the bigger territory. So today, this is the territory. All land comprises 90 tribes. It's a great deal of tribes, right? And villages. So today we have 3,000 indigenous people. That's the population. As I said, we have two large associations, one in Marihaliti and another one that is smaller, that is from the Formoso region. That is the Rio Formoso Association. And we have 4 cooperatives. Kopi Hanama, that serves the land, and also other peoples, Nambiquara and Manuki peoples. And then we have cooperative piracy within the very same territory. But this cooperative works with the Haliti people only. And then we have two other cooperatives, Cooper Marceni and Coop Rio. And they work with this entire movement. They work with a planting. Well, the cooperatives came to play to be able to manage this work, to do the management of the work. Because the association was not, big enough to handle all the work. So we have subgroups, territories, as I showed, and this is all part of our territory. As a woman, I see this very important moment. I'm very much grateful for the opportunity of speaking about our life, the opportunity of speaking about women's participation, the opportunity to speak about my people. It's been more than 2 decades. Haliti aims at respecting the environment and the economic sustainability. But as we see in all societies, there are different thoughts, there are diverging thoughts and ideas. There are differences in terms of upholding our territory, defending our territory because of economic issues. Well, the minds are not well prepared. Humans need to be better prepared. I'm not afraid to say this here because I'm speaking to my people. There's still much to prepare my people. And I believe that greed can get in the way of sustainability, because sustainability is what can truly improve our quality of life. And that's our challenge to tackle. It's a challenge for women and for the people. Because together with me, we developed this work. We believe that today the world and the civilized society are highly globalized. So the Haliti people is struggling for improvements in a very balanced way. And in order to make this happen, it's worth pointing out here the leaderships, the ancestors, the elderly of the village, the pajé, because their voice, their words is what really makes a difference. They have more experience, they have more knowledge, not in writing, not in the academia. They have not been trained or educated professionally, but they have life experience, and I truly respect that. And I believe in that because our great leader, João Arrezumai, late João Arrezumai, he wouldn't write. Well, he barely spoke Portuguese, but from 300 people, he was able to make our population grow. He delimited the land, the school was installed, we have municipal and state schools, we have a health service in 3 regions. We have health services in 3 regions, and these were all achievements of this traditional indigenous leader. And I would like to pay a tribute to him. So our struggle is along this path. We look into the struggle of those who were here before us. And that's the struggle of women as well regarding organization. Well, union and resistance. We're sorry, she was interrupted.
A imagem dela, né?
Tereza, você tá ouvindo a gente?
Can you hear us, Teresa? I think she was cut off.
É bem possível, né? Muitas vezes a internet.
It's possible that she was cut off. The internet plan sometimes is not enough. Well, Teresa is back there in her village, right? And communication is a challenge. Yes, it is truly a challenge. Yes, especially now with the pandemic, we had to sort things out to be able to do online meetings. Us at OPAN and the indigenous people, they were also learning as well. Sometimes it worked out fine, sometimes it didn't. Well, let me take this opportunity while we wait for Teresa to come back on. So I would like to publicize and announce the next event that will take place under the scope of this project on May the 4th at 2 p.m. This is Brazil's time, and it's 6 p.m. in the United Kingdom. So we are going to welcome Hermanas en la Tierra. It's an organization that once participated in one of the activities, and it was highly important to hear from them. And we'll be discussing diversity and mobility, the divine desire. So here goes the invitation, the invite for those of you. Welcome back, Teresa. Nice to have you back. Oh yeah, can I finish? Yes, please. I was just, using the break to announce the next event. All right. As I was saying, Indigenous women participation happens in all of the struggles and movements. So movement and mobilization are the tools that we have in hand to position ourselves, to take our stance. So this is where we express our voice. And the movements that happen, the Saluti, they have always participated, they have always been there. And it's going to be no different now. And to close, I would like to say that I really want to convey the message that we, Haliti, we are very much concerned with our territory. We are very much concerned with our culture. We are concerned with the spiritual side of it, the mother language, because the mother language is one of the key tools. It is by means of the language that we do the rituals, for example. And agribusiness. Agribusiness in itself is not agri. I use my own motto. So in order to be agro, I have to be agro in everything. I have to be agri in my territory, in the land. I have to be agri in education and health. And I have to be agro in the overall quality of life of my people. And if there are some politicians that believe that the agribusiness in itself is enough for Haliti, they are mistaken, because for Haliti, the agribusiness must be everything. The agribusiness is about defending. It has to do with defense, give room, give quality of life. So I uphold all of that, and thank you so much for attending. I'm happy to have been able to highlight here with you our trajectory, the way our people live. Our territory is vast. Well, was my humble contribution in this afternoon session with all of you. Thank you.
We thank you, your availability and the opportunity to get to know this wonderful work you carry out. We thank the presence of you all here today. And I have myself a question for you. Something that is bothering all of us Brazilians, we that follow the indigenous struggle to preserve their lands and the indigenous women, and thinking on the diversity of peoples with which you work, both culturally as geographically. You are dealing with a huge area and far away from each other. So what are the main challenges you face in these more recent years that you are dealing with? If you could comment We also have a question here from Lucy Bell from England that she's thanking a lot for the wonderful work. I've been in São Paulo a little bit after Bolsonaro's election, and I saw the anguish and the consequences of his political discourse on the people. So can you say how your work and your fight for land changed when she took office, if you can elaborate these two questions? We are beyond our time limit, but we can have some more minutes to have more discussion. Well, first of all, I will answer the difficulty about geographic extension, and one of the main issues is logistics and communication. As Catiúscia said, and Tereza as well, Tereza faced the difficulty herself. She had interruption in her internet. We are talking here, but in most of the territories, we don't have internet available, and the logistics, finding support to address these communities, because we are dealing with diverse situations. There are places we can reach by car, some places we have to go by boat, and within pandemics, Indigenous, there was a restriction not to get into Indigenous territories and have the least displacement possible. And so we depended on FUNAI as well for logistics, because there was this restriction. But even so, we were fighting for these people in the way we could, finding strength. As many said, our morning was fighting, because we were losing people. We are losing dear our dear family and friends, but we try to support one another. In my people, we didn't have that many deaths, but there was people that too many have died. And there was a lack of structure and a lack of policies thought for this emergency situation. It was very difficult to deal with that. And we had to count on our partner. The NGOs were the ones to support us the most. So my response, Bolsonaro, I will leave for Tereza to answer. I'm sorry. Thank you. Thank you, Alessandra. Well, Bolsonaro, he is very controversial. He is very complicated for us Indigenous peoples, not only my people, but other nations that are here, and other peoples that are Indigenous peoples here. As I said, and I think I was clear, there are groups supporting Bolsonaro that have their demands answered. And those who have a different perspective, not that it's different, but it is our right. We have to be respected, and we are not receiving the due attention. And this is already, there's already a division among Indigenous peoples already, which is very dangerous for society in general. So much so that, as I said, I'm organizing myself with 15 people. We have our group of dance and chant for Haliti Parisi. We are going to Brasilia in March, and there's a difficulty to displace from here to Cuiabá, the capital city of Mato Grosso, and then to Brasilia, the capital of Brazil. And it is not FUNAI that is paying for that. FUNAI denied our travel, denied giving us a van so we could go into 15 people. So we cannot come and go. We are forbidden because we are against agribusiness. And I'm a human being. I'm an indigenous. I have my life and I have to live it to the fullest, according to my reality, according to my customs and traditions. What my ancestors led to me, my dance is sacred, my praise are sacred, and we have to respect different opinions, be it indigenous or not. And with my background, my education in the university, I have knowledge. But this is what we are facing. Well, the association receives when it is mandatory to the government. When it is not mandatory, we are let aside as second-class Brazilians. I don't know if I was able to answer, but well, this is my point of view. So your rights are denied if you are not politically, if you do not politically agree with the government. Yes, then they deny. President of FUNAI, a person that took picture with me last week in the Agroparicis, denied transport so I could go and have my ritual together with my relatives. But we are here to fight. And while I'm breathing, I'm an indigenous Haliti and not government. Count on us in your fight, in your struggle. And whatever we could support you, because this is a task of resistance and require a lot of strength. And it's not easy for us Brazilians and for you in isolated territories, far away, not isolated, but far away from here, that depend more on government. For this type of activity is really complicated. So for those who are watching, this is the message. It's important to know your fight, your struggle. I don't know if anyone else has a question before we close. Well, I believe we can have our final thoughts. I would like to thank the participation of you all, your availability, your attention with our audience, and the presentation, systematic presentation of your work, which is key for all of us. And I invite all of you to take part in the other activities we will have in this project. I would like especially to thank Professor Luciana Morilas that made this event possible, and Catherine, that is our professor there in Ireland, that triggered these activities. And all of you, Alessandra, Tereza, Catiúscia, Artema, thank you very much for your presentation and participation. Luciana, we thank very much the opportunity of talking a little bit about Brazil, our difficulties, our challenges in face of such a challenging political context that all the world is watching. Pandemics and a government that is going backwards in terms of indigenous rights, and we are available for other dialogues, other invitation. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Artema. I also would like to thank the invitation, the opportunity, Tereza and Alessandra, and to be able to present this scenario, as Artema said, and say that although all of that, despite the scenario, we are here to formulate resistance to this scenario, to this situation. And here is where we find a space to echo this voice and plans. It is key for all of us, Indigenous and non-Indigenous women. The sum of our efforts is very important for all of us. So really, I'm really thankful, and I hope we can see each other again in other events and other spaces of discussion. Thank you, Catiúscia. Congratulations for your presentation and your work. And the last thanks to our interpreters that are here with us and the excellent work, and say that this is recorded, and it is recorded in Portuguese and English and will be available as soon as possible. Thank you very much. There's a person watching us, Tamara Pacheco, and she asked for Alessandra direction. If you could send your contact to her, we can mediate this contact for developing some work together.